This is our league, and this is your league. From the 55-yard line on CFL America Radio and the Sports History Network.
Stand by, 15 seconds to air. Stand by all cameras and videotape.
Ready with your opening graphics. Stand by, Howard. Here we come, Frank. Ready, Don.
Stand by audio, your opening music, and roll tape.
Take tape.
Coach Johnson, your team has a knack for coming to the White House. The decade is not even half over, and they've already won 2 Super Bowls. There's no telling what this team can do.
1994 began with the Cowboys winning their 2nd straight Super Bowl. Surprisingly, a few weeks later, America's team made headlines again.
We have mutually decided that I would no longer be the head football coach with the Dallas Cowboys.
The drama in Big D wasn't the only thing keeping the NFL in the news. Growing interest in the scouting combine took hold in February. Free agency, in only its 2nd year, made March the NFL's hot stove month.
The Cincinnati Bengals have the first selection.
And April, of course, belonged to the draft, where in 1994, first-round trades and first-rate fireworks elevated the mundane to must-see TV.
That's why the Colts are the laughingstock of the league year in and year out.
This was the dawn of the NFL as a year-round sport.
National Football League selection meeting is now in session.
Pittsburgh selects Lynn Swan.
Will their boomer? I mean, is he going to go in the first round at all? That's why the Colts are picking 2nd every year. Who in the hell is Mel Kiper?
The Chargers select Eli Manning.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. Back to
the 1994 draft was a benchmark for the NFL's modern era. One team had to dump a defensive starter on the eve of the draft in order to fit under the league's new salary cap.
San Francisco 49ers needed to make some room, or they would not even be able to participate in the draft today.
It had a new 7-round format, which led to one of the most upside-down drafts in history. Several late fines would help 4 different teams reach the Super Bowl.
The St. Louis Rams are the world champions.
And it ushered in a new era of trade inspired by Jerry Jones and Jimmy Johnson, the men who remade America's team.
They had made the big trade with Herschel Walker, where they had traded Herschel Walker to Minnesota for just a boatload of draft picks, which, for the most part, they used very wisely.
They end up with 9 NFL starters out of the 91-92 drafts. Russell, Maryland with the first pick. They draft Elvin Harper. They draft Dixon Edwards. They pick up Eric Williams, Leon Lett, Larry Brown. In 92, they draft Kevin Smith, Robert Jones. And if that wasn't enough, then they pick up some guy named Darren Woodson. So 9 guys in 2 drafts sort of fast forward this organization from 1 in 15 to winning 3 Super Bowls in 4 years.
Jimmy and Jerry, both of them were huge gamblers, and they traded like crazy.
My 5 years in Dallas, we made 51 trades, more than the rest of the league put together.
This freewheeling approach was backed by a mathematical tool of their own design, the draft pick value chart.
I never ever felt like this take the best player available was what I wanted to do. I wanted to take the player that I wanted. And if that pick was too high, I wanted to trade down to a position where he should be picked. I go to Jerry and I said, I think there's a better way to do it.
So Jerry's buddy, they were in the oil business together. His name was Mike McCoy. And he studied the past drafts.
Mike basically took the trades that had been made for years and put a quantitative value on them. so that you could fundamentally say the 5th pick in the 3rd round requires what to go with it to get up in the 2nd round.
Well, is there any consideration?
Soon, the chart became as ubiquitous in NFL circles as the periodic table in the classroom.
Everybody would refer to it before a trade was made. We would talk about, is this fair? What do you think of this trade? Here's what they're offering. And then somebody would say, what does the chart say?
Well, obviously we'd switch places and we would want 2 twos.
That chart was well received because we all, in trades, want to be sure that we don't get stiffed.
To switch first with them, all he wants is our 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and something else. I said, how about my daughter? We'll throw her in.
And the chart's been changed 100 times, salary cap, on and on, but it still gives you a quick look as far as making trades pick for pick.
Jerry and Jimmy, to me, they changed the whole dynamic. They took it from this sleepy little meeting to this live poker game.
While the Cowboys revolutionized the draft process, ESPN made innovations to the draft broadcast. They added former players like Joe Theismann, remote reporters with the latest scoop, and fly-on-the-wall cameras in certain war rooms, including the Dallas Cowboys.
Moments ago on the Dallas Cowboy war room camera, Jerry Jones was working the phones and ended up hanging up on one of the telephone calls looking rather upset.
It provided great visuals for us. It did, for the first time, kind of take the viewer inside, one of the clubs.
I mean, I think that's kind of the secret of television, take people where they normally can't go. And I remember Jerry Jones just being a guy, unlike any owner I had ever seen, like just out front all the time and not shy.
The fallout with Johnson made for a new dynamic in Dallas entering the '94 draft. It was Jerry's world now. Jones tried to wheel and deal his way high enough to take defensive end Willie McGinnis, but the chart, made popular by the Cowboys, now seemed to work against them.
Yeah, we tried everything in the world to get up to get Willie, and we couldn't come up with enough draft choices or point spread, and Jerry was sick about it.
And the Cowboy reaction in the war room was less than popular when New England made the choice of the player that they were trying to trade up to get. No word on if they'll move up for another defensive player.
You know that you have an opportunity to trade up and down in the draft, and we were going to trade Alvin Harper for one guy, and that was Willie McGinnis, and no one else.
With the 23rd pick in the 1st round, Dallas has selected Shante Carver, defensive end from Arizona State.
The Cowboys salvaged their draft in the 2nd round with the selection of Larry Allen, a future Hall of Famer. But the Carver pick was the first of many draft misses that would haunt the team for years to come.
It ain't like we all quit after Jimmy walked out. Everybody in this league would give anything in the world to be in the championship game and in the Super Bowl the next year, and we were. And sure, it was with Jimmy's team, but we didn't screw it up.
Up next, the impact of free agency and the top pick in the '94 draft.
The Cincinnati Bengals are now on the board.
15 years of the NFL draft here on ESPN. Boy, time flies when you're having fun. Lots of changes over the past decade and a half, from Billy Sims to Drew Bledsoe. The time has changed, the length has changed, but one thing hasn't changed. We're here, we're there, we're everywhere.
By 1994, the NFL draft had made it big. Now held in Times Square, ESPN's telecast was a television spectacle.
It was a pretty big event. It was huge, and it really started to grow. And the numbers, the ratings, all the preview shows and the like, the coverage that it had on SportsCenter, everything was elevated.
The NFL offseason had grown in popularity as well. Draftniks now took an interest in the data coming out of the scouting combine in February.
The popularity of it kind of caught me off guard because, we'd go there and we'd sit for hours and hours and hours and hours. Sometimes it felt like you're watching, paint peeling, but apparently people love it.
The poster child for this modern obsession with combine data was Dan Big Daddy Wilkinson, the consensus #1 overall pick.
We think we know who the first pick is. Young man named Dan Wilkinson, defensive tackle extraordinaire from Ohio State.
I saw this mammoth person sprinting effortlessly up and down the field, leading the pack, and naturally said, "Who is this guy?" He looked like a man among boys.
A big 6'4" 1/4", 313-pounder, ran that 4.72, 32 reps at 225, awesome weight room strength.
He set some combine numbers that were ridiculous. It was almost like Superman.
And for whatever reason, people decided that Dan Wilkinson is going to be the next Reggie White.
He's about as high a rated defensive lineman as you've seen, is that correct?
I really think, Chris, he's one of the top 3 defensive linemen in the last decade, up there with Reggie White and Cortez Kennedy.
And the point is, there isn't going to be another Reggie White.
There are big bucks ahead for Ohio State sophomore Dan Big Daddy Wilkinson. The Cincinnati Bengals made the 315-pound defensive tackle the top pick in today's NFL draft.
I'm very happy to be here. I'm very, glad that Cincinnati chose me as #1 pick. And basically, I'm ready to, get in camp as soon as possible and strap it up.
The knock on Dan was in the big games, he'd show up and flash and play brilliantly. And then against Purdue, when the game to me, he kind of just disappeared. Was he a guy that had the will, desire, motor to be a dominant player every single snap? And talking to high school coaches that he played against up in Dayton, that was the knock on him in high school.
There were always glimpses of the talent and the greatness, but it was never sustained. He would break your heart. You'd watch a game and go, there he is, there's Big Daddy. And then the next game or the next couple of games, he would disappear.
Big Daddy certainly wasn't the next Reggie White, but he did play for 13 years in the NFL.
He was a very serviceable NFL defensive lineman who lasted for more than a decade. There's no shame in that. But when you are selected #1, there is a burden of expectation that comes with that, and he never quite lived up to that standard.
Including Wilkinson, 6 of the first 13 picks in the 1994 draft were defensive linemen, a record at the time. While the Bengals were rebuilding, the Kansas City Chiefs were looking for a few final pieces to add to a contender. Modern free agency began in 1993, causing a shift in how NFL teams built their rosters.
It changed how you looked at the draft. This was a great way to fill in some of the holes on your roster with some veteran players.
The Chiefs filled a hole with future Hall of Famer Marcus Allen. Allen joined 1993 trade acquisition Joe Montana to lead Kansas City to the AFC title game, where they lost to the Bills. In the 1994 draft, the Chiefs needed to add offense, and the internal debate of their war room was captured in never-before-seen footage.
Now, the draft is actually happening in New York City, and we're on the phone right here talking with them, and as the draft goes on, they communicate. It's an open line.
With their first selection, the Chiefs knew they wanted a running back, but the room was divided over who to take. Florida State's William Floyd, Texas A&M's Greg Hill, or Arizona State's Mario Bates.
Who you want in that group? 25th pick. Greg Hill.
On the clock now, the Kansas City Chiefs, who came so close, who got to the AFC title game last year.
Bill, we have 5 minutes remaining with our selection.
We're at Hill and Bates, and I prefer Hill.
He gave this guy a better grade than he gave Greg. So we got to make a decision here.
Okay, we got 3 minutes and 40 seconds right now.
Is there any questions at all about this guy's character?
2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Any questions about Mario Bates' knee? No. We're fine. Okay.
Texas A&M.
Because Greg Hill is what he is, a tough SOB and a good football player. And I'm not so sure about the other guy, but I don't know the other guy.
We got Mario Bates from Arizona State, William Floyd from Florida State, and Greg Hill from Texas A&M. All 3 are running backs.
I will just say this. If Mario Bates hadn't got hurt, we wouldn't be talking about it.
Bill, we have 1 minute and 30 seconds remaining. You there, Bill?
Get it here. I'd say, yeah.
I mean, talk to you.
All right.
You go along on either one.
Right.
There's one deciding factor. This guy's got to coach him. You know that?
Right.
We got 30 seconds, Bill.
Whatever you want to do. I think Greg Hill's the player. I mean, Jimmy said the only difference in him was the size.
All right.
20 seconds.
Be excited with Greg Hill?
Yeah.
Okay. Greg Hill.
Greg Hill. What do you want?
Greg Hill.
Greg Hill.
Greg Hill. I'm turning in Greg Hill, running back from Texas A&M. It's going up.
The card is on its way to the commissioner, and you know what that means.
We're all going to find out.
With the 25th pick in the first round, Kansas City selects Greg Hill, running back, Texas A&M.
All right. Hey, got another number one pick.
It always gets down to a final decision. I had that responsibility with the Chiefs. As a general manager, you're trying to give your head coach the players that fit his personality.
All right.
Hopefully you make a good gut decision.
The Chiefs spent their first 4 picks on offensive skill players in 1994. 3 out of the 4 were gone from Kansas City in 4 years. The 94 season ended with a first-round loss in Miami and Joe Montana's retirement. Mario Bates and Greg Hill both turned in average NFL careers, each rushing for just over 3,000 yards. Still to come, the moment that forever changed the televised draft.
To me, it's a mistake.
Who in the hell is Mel Kiper, in a way?
It's the 59th annual selection meeting, as they call it in the NFL. And as the rules change and the brave new world of the salary cap and teams and free agency, perhaps more than ever before, a premium on the 7 rounds of the NFL draft.
I mean, so many things were going on in '94 that really hadn't been seen before. You had underclassmen being drafted in fairly significant numbers. You had free agency begin to have an effect on how teams filled needs. And you had all these mock drafts taking interest in the draft to a greater degree than ever before.
Mel Kiper is doing his, and Dr. Paul Zimmerman is doing his. No matter how many more hours these teams have spent having access to info and medicals and stuff that none of us have, we all think that we can do it as good as they do.
Well, Chris, this is a pick that I had. I had McGinnis going number 4 to New England. And really, I thought it because he is an impact player.
All right, Mel, the Rams now on the board. Now let's take a look at yours. Where should they be looking for value?
Well, their position.
Mel Kiper has built a career for himself as the outsider with inside knowledge, the first great armchair GM. He has published his own draft guide every spring since 1981, complete with write-ups on each pro prospect.
I'm always interested to read his book, as long as he sends it free.
By 1994, Kiper and his big board were fixtures of the broadcast. There was little debate as to who would go number 1, but intrigue surrounded the landing spots for Heath Shuler and Trent Dilfer, the top 2 quarterback prospects.
The Indianapolis Colts are now on the clock. Now they have 2 very high first-round picks, the number 2 pick right now and the number 7 pick overall.
With the second pick in the first round, the Indianapolis Colts select Marshall Faulk, running back, San Diego State.
He's a great back, but I strongly disagree with this pick. And it's not any criticism at all of Marshall Faulk. The Colts have to come out of this draft with a quarterback, and if they don't, they're ripe for some criticism.
Kiper, he had been building up 2 weeks prior to the draft about having to take a quarterback. And I was the opinion that I was running the Colts and not anybody on a network.
Bill Tobin took the future Hall of Famer. He had acquired the Colts' other top 10 pick by trading Jeff George to the Falcons, leaving free agent signee Jim Harbaugh as the only quarterback on the roster. The same Harbaugh that Tobin drafted 8 years earlier as GM of the Chicago Bears.
Walter Payton and Jim Harbaugh, the 2 most competitive players I've ever been around in my life. And he was going to be my quarterback. I wasn't interested in Trent Dilfer and Heath Shuler. We didn't have either one of them in our top 10 players.
With the third pick of the first round, the Washington Redskins select Heath Shuler, quarterback, Tennessee. New England Patriots select Willie McGinnis, linebacker, USC.
Trent Dilfer is falling
Can you believe that?
I don't know what he's thinking. Was Santa Claus waiting on him ever this exciting?
I don't know, man. This is amazing, huh? I get a big kick out of every year. I have that ugly green suit on and a big flock of seagulls hairdo. So that's why I like it being reruns. People actually believe I had hair at one point.
So you are surprised?
Oh, very surprised. Yeah, we thought for sure it would be either Indianapolis, Washington, or L.A. The next logical choice was the Indianapolis Colts.
The Colts traded up with the Rams, moving from number 7 to number 5. Everyone thought they were moving up to take Dilfer. What followed became the signature moment of the 1994 draft.
The Rams have made a trade with Indianapolis, and Indianapolis has selected Trev Alberts, linebacker from Nebraska.
Wow. That's simple.
Well, I mean, Albert's a great player.
Yeah,
There's no question about that. But you got a problem with this move?
I think it's a typical Colt move. I mean, here's a team that needed a franchise quarterback. To pass up a Trent Dilfer when all you have is Jim Harbaugh, give me a break. That's why the Colts are picking second every year in the draft, not battling for the Super Bowl like other clubs in the National Football League.
It was, whoa, Mel, where are you going, Babes? You know, mild-mannered Mel, all of a sudden, boom, here he comes.
That's why the Colts are picking second every year in the draft.
You know, Mel was never shy in his opinion, and he wasn't shy in his opinion in this case.
Well, you think about Jim Harbaugh was a solid quarterback, not a great one. And you felt like, okay, can these quarterbacks improve your position? And I thought Trent Dilfer could.
And obviously, general managers don't like to be called out like that by analysts.
So shortly afterward, we kick it down to Indianapolis, where Chris Mortensen is with Bill Tobin.
I knew you'd have one surprise for us today.
Not a surprise to us.
No, that's great. I mean, no, that's what I mean. I'm not, hey. One question, Bill. A lot of criticism about not taking a quarterback here. Your response?
Well, you know, we got a guy up there. Who in the hell is Mel Kiper, in a way? I mean, here's a guy that criticizes everybody, whoever they take. He's got the answers to who you should take and who you shouldn't take. In my knowledge of him, he's never ever put on a jockstrap. He's never been a coach. He's never been a scout. He's never been an administrator. And all of a sudden, he's an expert. He's in our papers 2 days ago telling us who we have to take. We don't have to take anybody that Mel Kiper says we have to take. Mel Kiper has no more credentials to do what he's doing than my neighbor, and my neighbor's a postman, and he doesn't even have season tickets to the NFL.
At that instant, it just became clear that this was reality television of the highest order.
Oh, I think I probably got my Irish up.
Bill Tobin was a hot-headed guy. I love Bill. He said what the entire league thought.
Who in the hell is Mel Kiper, in a way?
I know I and probably 27 other general managers congratulated him. It was classic.
Who in the hell is Mel Kiper?
Mel Kiper doesn't know any more than my postman.
The thing is, nobody's ever really tracked down Tobin's mailman to find out exactly how much he does. I'd like to know that sometime. It could be that Tobin's mailman knows a lot about football. It might have been more of a compliment than any of us realized.
Mel Kiper? And Bill Tobin, obviously, not going out to dinner tonight.
Well, Chris, I'll tell you, I'm secure in my position. Obviously, Bill Tobin is not very secure in his position to have a response like that.
I didn't take exception to the comments. Bill Tobin was entitled to his opinion. He was critical of what I said, so be it. I wasn't there to shill for the NFL. I was there to give an opinion, and I've always done that.
To me, it's a mistake. You cannot go with Jim Harbaugh and pass up Trent Dilfer. Forget it. That's why the Colts are the laughingstock of the league year in and year out.
April 24th, 1994, a day that will live in infamy.
Kiper, Tobin, and Tobin's postman became the talk of the draft.
What do you want to cover first, our players or that jerk in Baltimore?
You know, of all the things my whole career, that might be the one that people want to talk about the most.
It was obviously very entertaining for the fans, and it's still being talked about today.
Mel, you know, is probably the single biggest person in terms of why the draft has been popular on ESPN. So we didn't have any problem with it. You know, controversy is good on television.
And we will win regardless of what Mel Kiper says.
In the aftermath, Jim Harbaugh led the Colts to the AFC Championship game in 1995. Marshall Faulk is in the Hall of Fame. Trev Alberts was out of the league in just 3 years. Bill Tobin was fired in 1997 after the Colts went 3-13. More on Trent Dilfer and the draft's other quarterbacks next.
All right, back to
Well, first of all, it's been a great experience for me, not just me, but everybody who came. We had fun. It's first class. They really treat you nice up here.
1994 was the second year the NFL showcased multiple players live at the draft.
Our next guest is a three-time All-American running back, a public administration major from New Orleans, Louisiana. Please welcome Marshall Faulk.
I always tell people about that moment, and I love going back to the draft because it takes me back, and it brings me back to that moment.
Fresno State quarterback Trent Dilfer's moment involves some behind-the-scenes drama.
My situation got a little tipsy-turvy there. We really thought that the whole process we were going to the Redskins.
The Washington Redskins select Heath Shuler, quarterback, Tennessee.
So you are surprised?
Oh, very surprised. But, hey, I mean, shows how much we know and how much everybody else knows.
I spent a ton of time with the Redskins. Obviously must not have done very well on the tests.
The Redskins' change of heart came not with a test, but with the hire of head coach Norv Turner.
At the end of the regular season, we had Trent Dilfer rated ahead of Heath Shuler. We thought he was more of what we had been used to with the Redskins, big, strong-arm guy. With the change in coaches, mobility became a big issue. So that's where Shuler kind of jumped up in the process.
The next logical choice was the Indianapolis Colts. Add context to the Mel Kiper argument with Tobin. We had manipulated the draft and let the Colts know that I wouldn't play for them. We had the leverage of the next year was expansion, and I would have been the first pick the next year. I was very serious that I was willing to sit out an entire year and then go into expansion.
Your legs are moving a little bit. You nervous right now?
I'm a little nervous, yeah, I am.
All right, Boom, we'll see here in just a minute.
Which then kind of by default, I then knew I was going to Tampa.
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have made the sixth pick in the first round, and they've selected Trent Dilfer, quarterback, Fresno State.
Well, they took their time, didn't they? But the Buccaneers have gotten their man, Trent Dilfer.
I have deep regrets that we did that. I think that is horrible. My wife to this day gets mad at me for doing it. The chance to play with Marshall Faulk for 10 years, think my career might have been a little bit different. But it's how things go.
You don't seem very excited, Andy.
Oh, I'm very
Surprised. But I'm fired up. I really am fired up. I mean, this is a perfect situation.
I'm glad you didn't go to a couple teams.
Yeah, it does not matter when you're drafted. It's who you're drafted by.
Dilfer got his wish. After 6 underwhelming years as a Buccaneer, he signed with the Ravens in 2000, where, aided by one of the NFL's all-time great defenses, he won a Super Bowl in Tampa Bay's Raymond James Stadium.
And what a pass. Dilfer threw right down the middle. He had to throw one here in Tampa Bay ever like that. That pass was gorgeous.
3 picks before Dilfer, Washington selected Heath Shuler, the quarterback many thought was a can't-miss prospect.
Chris, I think Norv Turner's got his Troy Aikman, and it's going to be Heath Shuler.
Personally, I thought Heath Shuler had first-round ability, but wasn't a top pick. But what happens is you can talk yourself into, we have to get a quarterback. If we don't take one here, we won't get one.
The irony for the Redskins was that they did find a quarterback in the 7th round of the same draft, in Gus Frerotte. While Shuler was plagued with injuries and struggled, Frerotte won over the hometown crowd by outperforming his first-round counterpart.
Issue 1, Gus Frerotte. How successful will Gus Frerotte be?
John, if Heath Shuler's performance last week is any measure, which is absolute 0, this guy can't get less than a 5.
I went into Coach Turner. I said, Coach, why do these people hate me so much? You know, it emotionally affected me because I'd never had people dislike me ever in my life.
Shuler won only 4 games in 13 starts, while throwing twice as many interceptions as touchdowns.
It's going to be picked off. How do you explain that?
In 1996, Frerotte would lead Washington to its first winning season in 5 years.
You know, we took the guy, everybody said, hey, this guy's a can't miss. Well, it didn't work out. We were trying to find a young quarterback. We found a guy in the 7th round ahead of the guy in the 1st round. That's really what happened at the end of the day.
Frerotte left the Redskins after 5 seasons and had a lengthy career as an NFL journeyman. Heath Shuler would eventually find success in Washington, earning a seat in the House of Representatives for his home state of North Carolina.
If you don't have obstacles to overcome, how much do you really appreciate the true goals that you've obtained? And now obtaining those goals are not personal anymore.
Do you remember where he finished in the Heisman that year?
Second.
Do you remember who finished first?
Charlie Ward.
In 1994, Charlie Ward was the reigning Heisman winner. But two issues kept him from being a top pick. First, he was a two-sport athlete, and NFL teams doubted his dedication to football. Second, he didn't fit the prototype for a franchise QB.
Ward has joined Army's Pete Dawkins as the only Heisman winners to go undrafted. Dawkins was ignored back in 1959 because of his military commitment. Ward was given the cold shoulder treatment because he refused to make a choice between the NFL and the NBA.
My statement was, if the NFL didn't choose me in the first round, I would consider my other options. I'm not sure how that got to, if I didn't get drafted in the first round, that I wouldn't come and play football, or it made it seem like I was being arrogant. But no one approached because I wasn't 6'5", 210 guy.
What is the quarterback at Florida State saying about his basketball?
It all comes down to where he's drafted.
How high is drafted?
Yeah, how high he's drafted. Now, he said obviously if he's #1 draft pick in football, that's where he's going to go. Anything less than that, still up in the air. I don't know.
The Kansas City Chiefs called to see if I would be interested in being a backup for Joe Montana.
Lamar Hunt was enamored with him, and we all were. He was a great athlete. And we got down 6th, 7th round, and we were considering doing that. Would have been an interesting pick.
It's a fine prospect here.
But I couldn't guarantee them that I would show up for training camp if I would have gotten drafted in the NBA in the first round.
With the 26th pick in the 1994 NBA draft, the New York Knicks select Charlie Ward from Florida State University.
Charlie Ward played for 12 seasons in the NBA, mostly in a reserve role. But the question remains, with players like Russell Wilson and Robert Griffin changing the perception of what it takes to be a franchise quarterback. Was Ward just ahead of his time?
I see myself as one of those guys if I had an opportunity to play in the NFL.
You still hoop at all? Not anymore.
Ironically, Ward now makes a living with the sport that spurned him 2 decades ago.
Well, I'm currently coaching, high school football. I got a quarterback.
Okay.
That's he has potential.
Okay.
Good. There you go.
So soft-spoken, man. You're a legend. This guy.
I'm not a legend.
Yes, this guy's a legend.
7 quarterbacks were taken on the second day of the draft instead of Charlie Ward. Jay Walker had a 100% completion percentage in his career. He was 2 for 2. Jim Miller started 26 games for the Bears and led them to a 13-3 record in 2001. Glenn Foley threw for 415 yards and 3 touchdowns against Steve Young in San Francisco, but in a losing effort. Next, the afterthoughts of the '94 draft that would become Super Bowl heroes.
One, 2, 3 Rivers. Woo! Let me hear that quarterback shiver. Big buck, big play. Ooh, Lord, what you got to say?
Pure entertainment.
To date, Marshall Faulk and Larry Allen are the only 2 Hall of Fame players to come out of the 1994 draft. But there was no shortage of Hall of Fame talkers.
He didn't want to catch that. He didn't want to catch it. He didn't want to catch it. He didn't want to catch it. Just like you don't want to catch it.
You ain't tackled nobody yet. Scrub.
Don't quote me on that now.
Coincidentally, many of the head talkers from that draft became the talking heads who cover the draft today.
They can keep building this offensive line and protect that quarterback.
If you wanted to draft the best talker available, you would have had to think long and hard about who you wanted to take first. You had Kurt Warner in that draft. You had Trent Dilfer. You had Rodney Harrison, you had Willie McGinnis, you had Marshall Faulk. I mean, that's a Mount Rushmore of Gab.
Football really started to grow in the early to mid 90s, and watching guys like Tom Jackson, I was like, I want to do this. I want to interview players and be around the game that I love.
But when it comes to the draft, at least one former player turned broadcaster doesn't get all the fuss.
If I didn't work it, I wouldn't watch it. My boss told me, I'm being honest. If there's anything I am on TV that's honest, I wouldn't watch it. Because I'm a player, and I know how many of those guys that we're going to talk about so much are going to end up on the streets, and how many guys you don't even hear draft day are going to be the guys that win you a game in the fourth quarter with 4 minutes left. And the fact that the audience sits there and consumes it all, I struggle with it. And I do it, but it's not even close to an exact science.
A case in point is Jamal Anderson, one of 1994's big talkers and a 7th-round steal for the Atlanta Falcons.
Woo, I like it. Now you know I got you that last play. Number one, I was a tweener, a fullback, tailback. So it was like, what position is he going to play?
And look at Jamal Anderson bust through the line. A fine run for the big guy.
And number two, I messed my ankle up at the end of my college career. So that might have got me more than anything else.
Up to the time he got hurt. Up to the time he got hurt, he was a roaring Jesse. And he got hurt. But he's got the power coupled with all the other things.
I thought Kansas City was going to be the team. They came down to me and another guy, Donnell Bennett from University of Miami. And they selected Bennett. I did not ever forget that.
Anderson didn't forget the other 22 either.
I'm almost positive there were 23 running backs selected before me. Eric Red had a couple of good years. Chuck Levy, Arizona. Charlie Garner was outstanding. Mario Bates, nice guy, but that didn't work out. Donnell Bennett. Jeff Cothran, Tony Vincent. Wow. He ended up coming to Atlanta, and he was one of my backups. In the end of the day, I think there's only one guy on here who put up better numbers than me.
Actually, 2. But who's counting? While most of the others faded into obscurity, Anderson created the Dirty Bird and soared into the Super Bowl.
Touchdown Falcons, Jamal Anderson out of the backfield, and here is the Dirty Bird dance.
To be a big part of that coming from where I came from, I mean, I wanted everybody who didn't draft me to pay. The best thing ever happened to Kansas City Chiefs was me going to the NFC. I can assure you that, Kansas City Chiefs.
All right, now, in regard to the free agent scenario, it may be a shot in the dark, but if there is a priority, a high priority guy here, you need to be there on the doorstep.
As part of the league's new collective bargaining agreement, the draft shrunk to 7 rounds in 1994, creating another pool of free agents among undrafted rookies.
A lot of teams after round 7 all ran for the phones to call the guys and try and sign free agents, the guys you would have drafted in rounds 8, 9, 10.
Let them know that, if you're not drafted, we're really interested in you. If we can't squeeze you on board, we're going to come knocking on your door.
But what we're trying to do is create a situation where we're saying, our guy's there, we've got the contract, this is the deal, sign it and let's go.
That part of the draft was really more frantic than the regular draft because every team's planning the same thing.
So in other words, we're gonna have to eliminate the guys that we think are going to get drafted and have the best chance of being someplace where there will be a legitimate free agent.
So what I have to do is follow the draft if I can. If I can get ESPN 2 on, whatever.
There were a lot of guys that would have been drafted that weren't, but in a 7-round draft, they fell through the cracks.
1994 remains the best undrafted class in NFL history, including Kurt Warner, Jeff Garcia, D'Marco Farr, Tony Richardson, and Rod Smith, the Broncos' all-time leader in receptions, yards, and touchdowns.
In the end zone, Rod Smith with a Denver touchdown.
I'm probably one of those guys they looked at, say he's too slow and really kind of didn't even give me a chance. But I didn't get drafted, and I'm still upset by that.
I don't think you ever get over, your name not being called on draft day. When you get a sack in the NFL and you start doing a sack dance and pointing to people, you are pointing out every face from the combine, from the bowl games, all those coaches and scouts.
Everyone that missed on you, that's the people you're yelling at.
You just don't know where Terrell Davis is going to come from, where Tom Brady's going to come from, where Jamal Anderson is going to come from. You like to think you have some great idea about the top picks, but sometimes Ryan Leaf happens, you know?
Up next,
Not today.
the most celebrated member of that undrafted class.
The seventh pick in the draft was traded by the Rams to San Francisco.
No draft pick in NFL history has been traded more than the seventh pick in the '94 draft. Number 7 started with the Falcons, who traded it to the Colts for quarterback Jeff George. The Colts packaged the pick with a third-round selection to move up to the Rams slot at number 5 to select Trev Alberts. Los Angeles traded the pick to the 49ers and kept trading down, netting multiple draft picks. San Francisco, the final resting spot of the 7th overall pick, used it to select defensive tackle Bryant Young. Young started every game as a rookie and contributed to the 49ers' Super Bowl victory.
The San Francisco 49ers are the first team to win 5 Super Bowl championships.
Bryant Young was just the beginning of San Francisco's draft success in 1994. The 49ers started 4 rookies on their Super Bowl winning team.
That 94 draft was huge for us. Bryant Young was one of the great 49ers of all time. Lee Waddell was a great contributor. Doug Bryan was a contributor. So guys contributed right away. That was a big deal for us because we needed every ounce of whatever we could possibly get.
Floyd dives into the end zone. Touchdown, 49ers.
The 94 draft helped San Francisco win Super Bowl 29. The same draft aided the Rams in winning Super Bowl 34, starting with the selection of their eventual all-time leading receiver.
The broadcast is getting ready to transfer from ESPN to ESPN2. And I hear Chris Berman saying, goodbye to everybody who's been watching.
For those of you that have watched us on ESPN, we thank you for joining us.
But in the background, you have the guy doing the announcement of the guys who are being picked.
The Indianapolis Colts second-round choice is Eric Malum, center from California.
And I hear this guy go, with the 33rd pick, the Los Angeles Rams select Isaac Bruce.
He is, and the type of guy that can wreak some havoc. It'll be interesting to see how he fits, because Bill Parcells will unleash him.
And I was like, did he call my name? To my agent. He was like, no, I don't think he called you. I think he called Isaac Davis from Arkansas.
Many other. Of course, in Tampa Bay.
I'm just watching now. I'm watching the screen because the screen goes current selection. Los Angeles Rams select Isaac Bruce, and I just went bonkers in his house. I was like, I told you they called me.
Isaac Bruce wasn't the only starter from the Rams Super Bowl team selected in '94. The Rams drafted free safety Keith Lyle in the 3rd round and landed defensive tackle D'Marco Farr as an undrafted free agent. The 2nd pick of '94, Marshall Faulk, was acquired via trade from Indianapolis in '99.
Really? All those guys were drafted in 94?
94, yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Finally, the man many consider to be the greatest undrafted free agent of all time, Kurt Warner, was also from the class of '94.
Kurt Warner was one of them. What are your thoughts?
He was 94? I didn't know he was 94.
Man, what a year. Love you, Coach. I love you, too. Thanks for the team.
Warner began his NFL journey as an undrafted free agent in Packers camp.
He had a little trouble being comfortable with our system, and that eventually got him cut. That was just stupidity on our part.
The future 2-time NFL MVP earned his shot in the NFL through a stint in the Arena League and a tour in NFL Europe.
Now, Kurt did get a lot better once he went to the Arena League and once he got some World League experience. And I think getting cut from Green Bay lit a fire in him. But he did some good stuff in college, too. And somebody should have been able to see the traits that he had that you could develop this.
Quarterback doesn't look bad, Jimmy.
What?
He doesn't look too bad.
Quarterback? No, he looks pretty good.
If there is one thing that Warner's story proved, it is that the NFL draft can be a crapshoot.
Well, it tells me some guys just copy off other guys' reports. I mean, some of the scouts. When you miss a guy like DeMarco, when you miss a guy like Kurt Warner, I mean, someone should lose their job.
Crapshoot or not, the draft of '94 was just the beginning of the NFL's rise to a year-round sport.
It was becoming a bigger event nationally. It wasn't just about ESPN putting on the 2 days of the draft. Talk radio was talking about it incessantly. The newspapers were covering it like a major event. The magazines were covering it like a major event. You were hearing trade rumors.
The Cowboys, they hoped they would have a deal with the Rams, trading Alvin Harper in Dallas, moving into that 5 spot.
When that stuff starts to foment and build up, you know that you are riding a pretty good wave, and that wave has not crested. I mean, it has just gone higher and higher and higher.
Here at the NFL Draft at the Marriott Marquis.
There is very little downtime for NFL fans the way this thing has played out.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends.